So picture this. It's September 2024. I'm in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I'm a retired deputy sheriff, and I'm about to inhale an enormous amount of drugs through a crystal meth pipe. So I put people in jail for drugs for over a decade. And there I was, willingly stepping into the unknown, desperate for healing. When I started off in law enforcement, I was all about law and order, protecting and serving. And if I put you in cuffs, you had to meet the elements of the crime, plain and simple. And I thought I knew what I was getting into, but I had no idea. I've seen a husband shoot and kill his wife in front of their 2 children on Christmas Eve. Multiple dead bodies, shattered families. And in the beginning, I thought everything was fine. I was just running and gunning, going call to call, compartmentalize, go to the next call, compartmentalize, go to the next call. And I learned how to do that from watching my dad. My dad was a homicide detective, so he saw the worst of the worst as well. He would compartmentalize, he would come home, and he would self-medicate. And he died about 25 years premature. And it broke my heart. And I told myself I was not going to do that to my family. At least not the alcohol. But how do I come home on Christmas Day after seeing a husband shoot his wife in front of their 2 children on Christmas Eve and just be okay? Well, it actually wasn't. I was just faking it, and I really wasn't making it, because all those compartmentalized boxes started spilling over. And it first started off at home with frustration, and then it kind of bled over into anger, and then it just turned into straight rage. And then life threw me a curveball. November 14th, 2018, I was riding my motorcycle on duty. I crashed. I blew out my thumb tendon, my left shoulder, my left bicep, and both my knees. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't working, and I had stillness. And my wife, Kim, said, "You know, Robbie, I think this happened for a reason." And I was like, well, yeah, I hit a slick spot in the road. And Kim meant something so much deeper. And she was right. Like she's usually right. Because with all the recovery from the surgeries, I realized that it wasn't the physical damage that was the problem. It was the emotional damage that I'd inflicted on my wife and son over the last 15 years. And once I realized that, I knew that I was going to dive headlong into mental health and wellness, and I did. I started off with yoga, all the way through talk therapy, and nothing worked. Nothing was touching that anger and that rage. And I also started listening to podcasts where veterans were talking about plant medicine, psychedelics, And at first I rolled my eyes. But I listened to these warriors. And after wrestling with it for several years, I researched it, and I realized that this really wasn't meeting the elements of a crime. I can argue that now it's not even a Schedule 1 or a 2 drug. So if it's not meeting the elements of a crime, it's not criminal, then it must be medicine. And then my next paradigm shift was, I need this medicine. And I reached out to the Siren Project, which is a lifeline for first responders. And they facilitated and they prepared me for my retreat down to Mexico. And maybe just as important, they showed me that I wasn't alone. Down in Mexico, the mushrooms cracked me open. I saw my wife, I saw my son through a completely different lens. I could see the pain that I had caused them, and I was able to forgive myself. I was able to stop worrying about the future, and I let go of the past. In one inhale, the 5-MeO-DMT completely obliterated my ego. There was no more Robbie. There was no more badge. There was no more trauma. There was just peace. I had thought I was broken. And it helped me understand that I had just been gripping the wheel so hard for so long that I'd forgotten who I was. And then I just needed to let go. Coming home, I started fresh with my family, my purpose, my mission. I realized that vulnerability is strength. You know, for a long time I'd say that, but I never felt it. Many times people would reach out to me and they could see that I needed help, and I would cross my arms and just say, no, I'm fine, I'm cool. And that showed no courage. You know, accepting and asking for help, that's strength. So now I've made it my mission to help other first responders who are drowning in PTS, addiction, anxiety, depression, insomnia. We all know that plant medicine is controversial, you know, especially coming from my world, but it saved my life. I'm a husband, a father, a retired deputy sheriff. I'm a survivor. And I chose another path. And who knew, going down to Mexico and inhaling an incredible amount of drugs through a crystal meth pipe would save this deputy sheriff's life. Thank you.